Welcome to a series of interviews that I recently conducted with an elder and a spiritual leader in our local community here in New Mexico. His name is Patricio Dominguez. Enjoy. I guess, after talking with you for a little bit, and I'm appreciative of being able to do so, it's very obvious to me that I haven't reached this state of perception that is potentially possible.
No, most people do not get to that state. In fact,
I guess to my basic question, what is it experience like? What does it feel like to be in a more spiritual place in your mind? What can we anticipate?
This is a question that has been asked a lot of enlightened, quote unquote, enlightened people. It's something that the Western enlightened. And I mean the Eastern Enlightened. I'm not talking about Europe, the big three that I mentioned. All the religions that came out of the Middle East, but the religions that came out of the Far East, like the Indian and all those, they actually talk about being able to get to that space where the spiritual aspect of life is very, very tangible in a person. Mm-hmm. They actually talk about that. But one of the questions that keep coming up, and actually if you read some of their, like the Hindu Bible, there's this one question that keeps popping up. It says, well, how does an enlightened man talk? How does an enlightened man walk? How does an enlightened man act in the world? The truth is, you cannot tell an enlightened person from a regular person directly. It is through very careful observation of the way they operate in the world, because it's so subtle. The enlightened being is still has a physicality. And so a lot of what they will do is very, very similar. They will still eat, they will still walk, they will still talk. But there's a subtle difference when they do, because they are, we might say, a cut above the normal awareness. They actually see a little bit of a glimpse of things. I could give you an example that probably is close but not perfect. A blind man does not perceive light and does not perceive the benefits of having sight. But the blind person can still function in the material world. In other words, they can still walk down the street, they can still talk to people, they still eat, they still can function in the material world. It's just that they don't have the functionality of a sighted person. It's like if sighted people were like a special group, and the blind people weren't really aware that they were the different ones. Let's say everybody was blind and only a few people were born with sight. They wouldn't quite perceive that there is somebody that's walking among them that actually is perceiving something that's a little bit different, because their conversations with them would still be about, what taste do you like? What feels good to you? How's your relationship with a lot of the normal things would still happen, but yet the sighted person would always seem to have just a slightly different perspective, even though the blind person would never really understand exactly what's going on there. And this is the challenge of how how does a person who is spiritually awake function in the world? The answer is very, very similar to an ordinary person, except just a smidge more aware of things that are going on, because suddenly they see the interactions that are going on that are not visible to the ordinary consciousness.
So you're describing having an extra sensory superpower that would be really hard to perceive or to contemplate without actually experiencing such. And I could only imagine that having extra superpowers would make life a whole bunch more interesting and probably enjoyable. So in terms of just even eating and sleeping, being able to perceive the world in nuanced ways, I would imagine is probably something that would be quite incentivizing to a lot of people.
It should be incentivizing to people. What de-incentivizes is the fact that it's not easy to get there. Everybody would love to be a musician. Everybody would love to be able to play the piano or the guitar and be a star. But the truth is, it takes a heck of a lot of work. I mean, you have to study scales. You have to get an instrument. You have to learn how to manipulate it. You have to learn scales. You have to develop songs. You have to develop rhythm. It's really. But when you've got it, now you're special. You're really, really special. Oh, he's a musician. He's a musician. It's like, and everybody love it. And it's the same way. Oh, I'd love to be enlightened. I would love to be able to perceive the spiritual world. It sounds really, look at how great it would be to be able to walk into the forest and feel, not just see the forest, but actually feel the energy coming off of the trees, to actually perceive the growth factor that's happening there, or to meet people and actually be able to touch an aspect of them that they don't even know they have. It sounds wonderful. The process is tedious, and that's why it was necessary to create the Church of the Spiritual Path, because we try to take ordinary people and point them in the right direction, give them a program that will get them there should they stay faithful to it. If they stay on the path, they can get there. Most of them probably won't.
And cannabis is part of this path? Or at least it's a tool that could be accessed.
What is the difference between a person, going back to the blind person analogy, what is the difference between a blind person and a sighted person? A sighted person has a capacity, a sense, we'll call it a sense, has a sense that the blind person does not have. Just like a sense of touch, it's a sense of touch, but a sighted person can touch light. A blind person cannot touch light. They do not feel light. A sighted person feels light. So what we have to do is we have to awaken a sense that is dormant or not developed in a human being to get to that level. The entheogens, the psychedelics, give a person a temporary experience of that. For a brief moment, it lets the blind man's eyes work. He has the eyes, but for some reason it doesn't connect. But then you give him this magic substance, and then the eyes start working for 30 minutes, 2 or 3 hours, and it opens up a world that is above and beyond what they used to have. They're now, for a brief moment, they can see. And then, of course, after that substance wears off, they go blind again. But they remember what they could see. In the process of opening and letting it close down, they begin to open to that. And in the process, they exercise the brain to get to a higher mind. Now, here's the rub. So you give somebody a substance that opens their capacities to the point where they can see spiritually, and then of course it dwindles down. Now, why isn't everybody who smokes cannabis or takes magic mushrooms or whatever, why aren't they awake? Here's the thing. Because you have to focus in a particular direction. Most cannabis smokers will take cannabis and they get a heightened sense of consciousness. But because they are not instructed on how to direct this new special awareness, they direct it back to the same activities that they have known in their regular life. So they direct it to the taste of food. Oh, food tastes so good. Oh, sex is just like out of this world. Oh, light and color is just so great. They have an expanded awareness of the things that they're normally awake or aware of. What nobody told them is, hey, maybe you ought to direct that special consciousness in this direction. You know, and they're like, oh, wow, well, I never did that. In fact, actually, what's the point of that? When I take this stuff, everything is beautiful, light is great, color and taste, I get, everything is great and good. So they don't do it. So it is not just the sacrament that makes a person spiritual. It is the sacrament and the guidance on how to direct that sacrament to that other space that makes the difference. Again, the spiritual path, because if you just take the entheogen, it's a path to a greater experience of the ordinary world. Suddenly, the blind man hears more clearly. The blind man has a more delicate touch, like that, and so he does not try to perceive light, because he doesn't realize there is light. He doesn't point his attention to opening his light sensing senses. So he doesn't. This is why entheogens play a role in the process. Why does the Church of the Spiritual Path use cannabis? Well, that was my choice. That was my choice. When I organized the Church of the Spiritual Path, I said, I need an entheogen. I knew I needed an entheogen because in order to move people to a spiritual awareness, to a spiritual consciousness, you have to move to a spiritual awareness. All of the ancient entheogens will do it, but I'm sort of a lazy man, or whatever. I did not want to sit with a student for 12 hours guiding them through these. Well, actually, the experience is very quick, and then like that. But it lasts so long. I just did not want to deal with that. Cannabis. I give a person on the path some cannabis, and for 2 or 3 hours, I can work with them and direct them, and then it's over and it's done. So I could have church services that only last 2 or 3 hours versus a church service that lasts freaking all night, or a day and a half if LSD was the entheogen of choice. I thought that was ridiculous. So I chose a substance that I knew actually had the capacity to open the consciousness, but did not have a duration that was ridiculous.
That's a fundamental logistical point, and why I'm really interested in DMT as well, because it has this really short acting period. So
DMT would be really great.
I hope you enjoyed this interview. I know that it was an incredibly interesting experience for me, and I hope that at least some of you shared some of that interest. As always, if you like videos like this, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, or consider becoming a patron for our channel, or a donor to the Medical Cannabis Research Fund, where we are fighting every single day to bring you objective, relevant information that you could use to make informed medical decisions, that you could use to maybe even expand your consciousness. We're doing it here. We're working for you at the Medical Cannabis Research Fund because together we are changing the world.